Blackstone Audio presents Potsdam, The End of World War II and the Remaking of Europe, by Michael Neiberg. This book is read by Arthur Morey. For Sue and John, with love. Introduction. On June 28, 1919, the signing of the Treaty of Versailles that officially ended the Great War, a U.S. Army captain strolled down the aisle of his local church to marry his sweetheart. Although he had distinguished himself in the war and proven himself as a leader on the battlefield, he had little desire to make the military a career. Nor did he, at this point in his life, express any special desire to enter the world of politics. He and another veteran of the war had instead taken out a lease in order to open a men's clothing store. The war had ended. In the future, he hoped, he would spend his time thinking about his family and his business, not war. On this day of all days, his thoughts were far from wars and the peace treaties that end them. Across the Atlantic Ocean on that same day, a controversial British politician was savoring a second chance. Having been humiliated and forced from office a few years before, he now had a dominant voice in Britain's defense policies as Secretary of State for War and Air. Anxious about the post-war world and fearful of the growth of Soviet-style Bolshevism, he had advocated an Allied operation to land British, American, and Japanese soldiers in northern Russia in support of the pro-Tsarist whites in the Russian Civil War. He disliked the Treaty of Versailles, calling it absurd and monstrous, in large part because he thought it weakened Germany too much. A dismantled Germany, he feared, could leave a deadly power vacuum in Europe that the Bolsheviks might seek to fill. Wanting to see Bolshevism strangled in its cradle, he saw the Versailles Treaty as a missed opportunity to remake the post-war world. As early as 1920, he had begun to call for major revisions to the treaty in Germany's favor because of the unreasonable demands it made on the Germans, the only possible counterweight on the European continent to the potentially even more dangerous Russians. When the time came for him to write a post-war treaty, he would argue for rejecting the Treaty of Versailles as a model. The Bolsheviks, then fighting the bloody Russian Civil War, took little notice of the Treaty of Versailles. Their revolutionary ardor, already anathema to the British, French, and Americans, the Bolsheviks had sealed their diplomatic isolation by surrendering to the Germans in the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in March 1918. That surrender had given the Germans the resources.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?